I just had an award-winning author here, and she has written a book called Hands of Gold, which is a powerful award-winning story inspired by her grandfather's incredible journey of resilience and survival of pre-Nazi Europe, and how he almost died of tuberculosis and how he was in the test trials for that. I mean, it is an incredible story and journey. And I love having just real, beautiful conversations about people's lives and how they can impact the life of others. Her grandfather was smart enough to record everything on cassette tapes and leave it for their family to understand his life's journey. So I think you're going to love this episode. It's just such a good episode. All right, enjoy. Hey, what's up, everyone? I am so looking forward to this conversation today. We are so excited because we have Ronni Robbins here. With over 36 years, she's an accomplished journalist. She's worked and has done things with the Huffington Post and Forbes and WebMD. Now, she has interviewed icons such as Wolf Blitzer and Hank Aaron. And in her debut novel, which we are going to touch on today, is called Hands of Gold. And it's a beautiful and award-winning story inspired by her grandfather's incredible journey of resilience and survival in pre-Nazi Europe. So I want you to really sit back and listen because this is going to be phenomenal. Like, this woman has such beautiful energy, and the fact that she can go in and write about such an incredible story. And I really want you guys to listen up, because every time we talk about stories that are life-changing and impactful, it helps you to grow, challenge, and transform your thinking. So, Ronni, thank you for being here on Street Talk. I appreciate you.
Well,
How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you
I'm
for
very,
having
very
me.
good. Yeah, I'm really excited to have this conversation. I love when we can take experiences of ourselves or people that we love or others and just try to impact the world, right? A little bit at a time. And just by reading a bit on your website and on your bio, I realized that this story is impactful. And so, before we get into all of that, I do want to know a little bit more about you, Ronni, because you have a beautiful, colorful life. You've done such beautiful things. So, Ronni, who are you? Who are you?
So, I'm an award-winning author and journalist. Like you said, I've written for some major publications, and right now I'm freelancing for two publications: Atlanta Journal Constitution and Medscape WebMD. But I also wrote this novel. My grandfather left cassette tapes of his life to the
Wow.
family, and I transcribed them and created a novel. So it was a new area for me, having been a daily and a weekly journalist for so long, and writing nonfiction to get into the fiction world, and also to get into the book writing world, from writing shorter stories for publication, writing stories, getting them out there about any number of topics. And this was a new area, but I saw something in the cassette tapes. Listening to the cassette tapes, I
Yeah.
realized there was a story that was worth more than the original column that I wrote about it. So I explored that.
What a beautiful gift your grandfather left you, because, as you're talking about that, I'm thinking, wow, I wish I would have done that with my grandparents and things like that, because we all have lives, right, Ronni? Like, we all have lives, and we have like these amazing things that happen in our life, good and bad. And lots of times that gets lost, right? And history continues, and that gets lost even more. And by the next like 2 to 3 generations, people are forgotten, right? And
Exactly.
it's nice that he left that impact, that he left recorded tapes. Like, that's huge, right? Huge. Yeah.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So the reason why, I mean, it's just one grandfather. Like, who cares, right? And I do encourage other people to do the same thing because of exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
But there was a love story, and I knew my grandparents loved each other, but to have gone through what they went through together, my grandfather was told he was terminal with tuberculosis at 26, and he lived till 86, obviously, because I'm here. But my grandmother had to be a breadwinner while he was recuperating from tuberculosis, and you know, it started out as a love story. They died on the same date, a year apart. So what's
Oh,
that like? One dies, and then the other one dies on, can't make it through the first anniversary of the death, and goes to, and they were, but to have gone through the tuberculosis when he was in and out of the hospital. And actually, he was a clinical trial patient for streptomycin, which is still used today. And tuberculosis is still in the news. It's the biggest killer, infectious disease killer in the world today.
oh,
But it
I
was
didn't know
all
that.
based on some of his that he was involved in the ground level of this experimental treatment that saved his lives and others, and a
Wow.
workplace shooting spree. These were different parts of
Yeah.
his story that I didn't know. Growing up, obviously, I knew a little bit about the Holocaust. They kept it quiet from us. So this was my way of learning about the person who I grew up with, about the people I grew up with, and really see a different side of them that I could never have understood even by just talking to them a few times in
Yeah.
depth.
Yeah, right. Because I'm sure that these aren't things that just come up over a turkey dinner or something, right? So,
Right, right.
so the
Yeah.
hands of gold. I know it's inspired by your grandfather's incredible story, and I was wondering, like, what was the most challenging part of bringing up this deeply personal story to life, right? Because now you have to listen to it and listen to the inflections of his voice and listen to what he's talking about, right? So what was that? What was the most challenging part that you found bringing up this deeply personal story?
So, of course, it was hard to go through that. Reliving their deaths.
Mhm, mhm,
That was
mhm.
hard. Hearing about his family all dying in the Holocaust that he left. He left Europe between the wars, so he got out
Wow.
before World War II. So he escaped. In that way, the Holocaust. But to have to hear that all his family died, to have to
Yeah.
hear what was going on back home where he grew
Wow.
up, the people that he grew up with were taken and perished in Auschwitz. I mean, there were like 13 children in his family, and some of them were already in America, but most of them and his parents died in the Holocaust.
Wow.
So he had to hear that from here, from America. And what was that like? I mean, he tried to urge them to get out. Nobody could have known how bad it was. So he had to live with that guilt too. And knowing, maybe thinking he could have done more, or, but there's, and there, but for the grace of God go I, it could have been him. It could have been my grandmother. And for that matter, it could have been us. I mean, what's going on in Israel is good
Yeah.
example of that. That you never, you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. But hatred and anti-Semitism still exists in powerful forces today. So unfortunately, hate is not going away. War is not going away.
That is so true. And so sad and impactful, right? I mean, that must have been hard to listen to, because that's also your family, right? It was also your great grandparents and, people that would have been in your life had that not happened. And it must have been, I think for me, it would have been, and I'm sure it was for you too, just kind of sitting there and going through that and thinking, wow, this has touched my family. Only what, maybe two generations from you? That's not a lot,
Right,
you
right,
know?
right.
That's
Yes,
not a lot. So
yes.
I'm grateful for
So,
his voice. Go ahead.
and I'll say that some of the information I didn't exactly learn from the cassette tapes, and I learned some, but he didn't go into all the specifics that I found out, and then I put my own voice in there in terms of the what he must have been thinking. I mean, I couldn't
Yeah,
have known what he thought. That's why I
of
made it
course.
into a novel, so I can have more literary license to assume things and to
Mhm, mhm.
and to create scenes that might not have been there. So I had to learn some of it from newspaper articles, and my family kept had a family tree going. So I studied all that, and then expanded upon it to for the story. So I learned a lot by doing my own research.
Yeah.
Uh,
I love that you did it in a novel too. I think it's going to be very fascinating to read because I'm going to pick up a copy. I love things like this. When I know that you're a tangible human on the other side of the screen, and Grandpa was tangible, and I love stuff like that. And as an award-winning journalist and novelist, how do you balance though that storytelling with the need to communicate the hard truths in that, right? Because you mentioned there's still anti-Semitism, right? There's still war going on in Israel, right?
yes.
So how do you balance that? Let me write this story, but also I need to communicate there's some hard truths going on here, right?
Well, when I wrote this, that all wasn't going on.
Okay.
I wrote it. I started writing it some 20 years ago.
Okay.
So it's just that history has repeated itself
Unfortunately.
since
Yeah.
unfortunately in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And we would have thought, and it was said at sometimes, didn't we get rid of tuberculosis? But no, we
Yeah.
haven't. We haven't.
Yeah.
COVID took over, and we thought that was the biggest thing going. The biggest health risk in the world, and maybe it did supplant tuberculosis for a little bit, but it didn't. It didn't wipe it out. It still was. We just didn't pay attention to it at that time, but it was always an issue around the world, maybe not so much here, but in other countries. And he
Okay.
brought it here. I mean, he must have gotten it from there, and because when soon after he came here, he was in the hospital with it. So, or there were others at the time that were also dealing with it, obviously,
Yeah.
because he was in a workplace. He was in a rehabilitation center with others who were also recuperating from tuberculosis.
Yeah. I
So there
didn't even
was
know
a
that. You brought up a fact or a statistic. I had no idea that it was still that, alive and well, unfortunately. Um, I wanted to know about you and your journey with this. Like, did you feel like this you've been writing this for a long time, right? So that means you did a lot of digging and you did a lot of research and you did a lot of soul searching, I'm sure. How has this story and writing this changed you? How do you feel like if it's changed you?
Well, I never was a novelist before. I never got into this area, and I think I didn't answer your question about how hard it is to jockey from being a news writer to being a
Yeah,
fiction
yeah,
writer, but it's all based on facts. It's all based on facts. The novel is it has a lot of nonfiction parts of it. These things did happen. I just played with them a
yeah.
little bit, but I you know I and I've learned so much about myself in this process, I will say.
Mhm.
And I've learned not to take everything so seriously because
Mm.
the people who went before us had it so much worse than we did. I am healthy. I don't have to deal with tuberculosis, thankfully, or that kind of a health risk that just disrupts your whole family. So I think that I've learned to try to put everything in perspective a little bit more, in that we think we have it so rough. We have a lot of
Yeah,
responsibilities where it's nonstop internet,
yeah,
but I think they had it worse. I think that we have experienced some rough times with COVID, I think, but I still feel like that they went through the Great Depression and
Yeah.
they had wars one after another. And their life seems tougher than ours
Oh,
in my
yeah.
opinion. Or maybe
Yeah.
I'm just
No,
blessed in
I
that
see
way.
it that way. I see it that way too. I mean, for goodness sakes, he lost his parents, his siblings, right? I mean, it was a horrible time. And with the war happening and everything right now overseas, and I'm not going to even try to act like I'm an expert in that because I am not. But those people are going through a hard time right now. Now, your grandfather's story spans like all of these themes of like survival and resilience and identity and illness and all of that, right? And and as you're talking, I'm just wondering, how do you see those themes now, resilience and survival and identity and illness and all of that, in today's cultural landscape? And you touched a little bit on it because you said, I don't even think we have it as hard as they do, right? But I'm wondering, with everything going on overseas and everything, and the truth is as Americans, we are blessed that we're a little bit spoiled in that, right?
Yeah, right.
And I hope that continues. I get nervous about things like that, because I am an American. I've been here all my life, so that means I'm spoiled in that I've never had to see, and I hope I never do see war on the ground in my home. You know, so I'm just wondering how you feel like your grandfather's story, spanning all of these different things, survival, resilience, identity, all this stuff. How do you see that in the themes today resonating with today's culture?
I think they do resonate with today's culture, and I could not have known that when I was writing this novel. I was just writing about my family's experience,
Right, right.
and which other people have said is very similar to their family's experience. I mean, we had immigrants come over to this country. It's not a political statement, it is a truth. Many of
Right.
us are descendant from immigrants. They came over to this
Yeah.
country. Um, so, and there's still political unrest as there was in Europe at that time.
Yeah.
Now, remember, it's not just Israel. We've got Russia and Ukraine
Yeah.
fighting, and guess
Yeah.
what? They were fighting in my book too. I mean, they were fighting at the time of my grandfather. Ukraine. Let's see. He was in Czechoslovakia, Hungary. My grandmother was in Romania. All of that, much of that became part of Ukraine. So
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
have a line in my story that in my book that says Russia just seems to like to fight. Well, how does that ring true today? There's fighting going on over there. So that's repeated. Health challenges have repeated, but we had 9/11 too,
Yeah.
remember,
Yeah.
and we
Yeah.
had war as a result of
Yeah.
that. So, maybe we're very pampered and protected and insulated, but we've had our experiences too
Yeah.
in small ways. And we had COVID.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've got wars, we've got COVID, we've got shootings. We
Yeah.
have
We do.
we have
You're right.
hatred in the world.
Yes, we
So
do.
I wish
Yes, we
I could
do.
say we've come a long way. Yes, we've come a long way, but there's still political strife. Um, we have it good, thank God. Better. We are very privileged in America, middle
Yeah.
class America. But don't forget there are others that aren't so well,
Yeah.
doing so well. So I think we don't open our minds enough to the fact that there is suffering in the world. And but the thing about it is, despite everything, what do you do? I mean, what do you do? So my grandfather had a great philosophy. Sometimes you're going to drop a cupcake with the chocolate side down, and sometimes you're not. And sometimes the 2-second rule, and you pick it back up. He didn't say that, but what he's
I
trying
love that. Yes.
he didn't
Yes.
say, but what he's trying to say is some days are good and some
Yeah.
days are bad,
Yeah.
and you gotta just hold on to the good days and appreciate. You know, all he wanted was the simple treasure of being with family, of
Yeah.
practicing his faith, of having the freedom that he enjoyed in America. And he did enjoy that freedom. He
Yeah.
did find that freedom that he was looking for. I mean, he thought it would be much better, maybe all the opportunities that would be available to him, but he noticed those that he did have. He noticed that he could go and practice his faith. He noticed that he wasn't persecuted here. So I think you gotta, count your blessings. That's all.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I really agree with you. And I also feel like, I think, and maybe you agree or disagree with this, but I think human to human, we seem to be kinder to each other. It's when we are in the social media world or we're listening to the mainstream media or stuff like that is when the hatred and the anger and all that comes in. I think about that because I have a neighbor who passed away. We didn't know them very well, but we helped them. And within months, they were both gone. The wife died, and then right after the husband died. I never asked them their political affiliation. I never asked them their race. I didn't care. It didn't matter to me. They were my neighbor, right?
Yeah.
And we should be that way with each other, Ronnie, right?
Yes.
If we all just freaking did that, helped each other out, all of this shit that what's going on around the world would cease because we would be kind to one another. And so it's really sad to see all the wars. I mean, the two wars that you mentioned are the ones that we see more in mainstream media, but there's hundreds of wars going on all over the world. And I'm like, why?
Right.
For what? What is going on, right? So
Right.
your book is impactful and it's come at a really good time, right? I know you've been writing it for 20 years, but I believe in God and I believe that when we do things, it comes when God says. And I think your book is at the right,
Absolutely.
I think it's at the right time. And so I was wondering when the people who are listening right now, what is the takeaway you want them to take from this book when they read it? I want to know from the mouth of the author. What do you want them to take away from this?
Well, I do want them to be transported to a different time and place and get away from their lives, which, that's what books do.
Yeah,
They bring you on a journey and take you away, and the takeaway is that, we're each important. We each have our own
yeah,
story, and despite everything that you go through, the obstacles, remember, he had health challenges, he had financial challenges. They were on welfare for a little bit. My grandmother was taking care of 5 children, on her small salary, as a seamstress. They were both in that industry. They didn't, that was at a time they didn't get paid very well, and they, were cheap labor, but they found the small treasures in life,
yeah,
that, and it really just goes back to what's important. And what's important in your world is probably not career, although it does take up a lot of your time. It takes up a lot of my time, but really it's family.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
your values, whether that, if you observe a religion, if you're practicing a religion, I think that's important. But it really is family,
yeah,
when it comes down to it, is spending time with family, appreciating family, and and going through life and realizing you too have a story, because this was just somebody's grandfather's story,
yeah,
but walking away and saying wow, or cry, some tears, because when you go through a life together and then you pass away, it's sad, and but you made a difference in the world in some way. I think he made a difference. He was just my grandfather. Who knew
yeah,
that he also saved people through being a clinical trial patient for streptomycin? Who knew that he was just my grandfather? And who knew that he saved people in a workplace shooting? Actually, in the real life he didn't, but he talked to the gunman, and that takes what we call chutzpah or gall or
yeah,
bravery, courage. So just everyone has this, I think. So
yeah,
it's everyone can write their story, can write somebody else's story, or can at least tape it, but appreciate those simple pleasures of having freedom, of
yeah,
having your health, of having some money to do what you want to do, and then when it comes down to it, family and your loved ones and your spouse and your children. And so I think we just got to treasure all of that in our lives. So I hope that they walk away with all of that.
Yeah, me too, because it sounds so impactful. And I'm so grateful to your grandpa for leaving those tapes behind. I really am. I think it's because I always think about how much I'm on screen myself. And when I'm gone, my grandchildren and my great grandchildren and my great great grandchildren will hopefully see all the videos and know who I am. Because otherwise we are really a vapor in the wind. We are that quick to leave this earth. So
Right.
thank you so much for sharing your beautiful story, the novel, your grandpa with us. But before I let you
Thank you.
go, I do want you to tell us how people can find that book and purchase it and read it themselves so they can be transported.
Well, it's on Amazon. If I move my head in the right direction, you can see that there's a QR code there. But it's on Amazon. It's on any place where you buy your books. So that's Barnes and Noble, Target, Walmart, Books a Million, um,
That's awesome.
Goodreads. And it's on my website too. You got to spell my name right, RonniRobbins.com, RONIROBBINS.com. You'll learn as much as you did, Neena, on my website, the background for the book, all of my about my journalism path a little bit, some of my articles, I should say, and just book talks, my schedule, and my podcast, and anywhere.
I love
Um,
it.
if you have a book club, then you can also see if there's questions on there for that.
Oh, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today and for sharing
Thank
your
you.
family with us. I really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
I love it. Guys, I love it, right? I told you her energy, right? She just has like this energy. I just love her. So just make sure you pick up her book. I'm going to link all of her information below because I want to make sure that you follow, that you go pick up the book, do the book clubs. Because I mean, when you have a good novel and somebody that you know actually existed, was here and had these stories, it just does something to you. It's something that happens when you know that you can connect with this person in that way. So I really appreciate you guys for being here. Thank you. And make sure that you share, like, subscribe. You know the drill. Until next time.